Good morning, everyone, and good evening to our folks over in the US or wherever you are based. My name is Shauna Purcell, and this is the Inside Track from Student to Intern with Gilbert DeWitte. I hope I said that right. Sorry, Gilbert. But anyways, we'll be introducing our host in a hot second. So just stay with us. But thank you guys all for joining. Essentially, I'm just going to walk you through some Zoom etiquettes kind of stuff, which I'm sure we're all aware of by now. But essentially, if you guys just look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A function. So this is kind of the space we want you to ask your questions to our guest speaker, or any questions you really got that come up through the session. And yeah, basically, we really want you to ask questions in this because the reason is Gilbert's decided to give away a Pro Tools Studio license. Now, for those who don't know, Pro Tools Studio is kind of this new retiering that we've done in Avid. And basically, we brought some ultimate features of Pro Tools down to Studio, including binaural mixing. Now, Gilbert has said he is going to be giving this license away to one lucky attendee who asks the best question. So make sure you're paying attention. Think about something interesting. Think about something that stumps Gilbert, really. And we'll be answering all the questions at the end. So without further ado, Brian, I'm going to throw it over to you. Kickstart the webinar. Hey.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, Shauna. I am excited to be here. My name is Brian Castle. I'm the Senior Director of Global Learning Partnerships, which basically means my job is to work with schools to help them introduce Avid tools to students. So whether we're talking about Media Composer or Pro Tools or Sibelius or other Avid tool sets, we work with schools to do all of that. I'm excited to be here, Gilbert, with you. Welcome. Welcome to the Inside Track. Welcome to, I think, your first Avid webinar.
Yes.
It's good to have you here. Gilbert, we have titled this session From Student to Intern. I know that you had a fairly noteworthy internship, and I know who the artist is. The folks with us on the line do not. But I think just for transparency, I intentionally don't know a lot of details about your experience. So I also get to be exploring this and asking you all kinds of fun questions along the way. So let's start just at a high level. Your name is Gilbert DeWitte. You're a student still. You just had an internship, but where are you studying? What year are you in? Let's start there, and then we'll talk about the internship.
All righty. Well, hello, everyone. My name's Gilbert DeWitte. I'm currently going into my junior year, my third year at the Augustana University School of Music here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. This is actually the studio that we use to record a lot of our tracks and stuff here at Augustana. It's called Studio 47. It's really awesome. It's actually where that photo of me was taken. That we used for the banner of the Inside Track. So yeah, along with that, my internship that I did this last summer was with Jason Derulo out in Los Angeles, California. I just got back into Sioux Falls about a little over a week ago. So, just moving back into Sioux Falls, getting back into the swing of things here. But now that internship was an absolute blast. So I was helping with different production, engineering, different management, just various other works and things that he wanted me to do. Basically, if you wanted me to do something and it was within my capabilities, I took the job.
So you intern with Jason Derulo, big name artist. It's yes. He's not a nobody.
Right.
Tell me what that experience was like, because that's a dream for so many students, so many aspiring recording engineers to be able to spend time with somebody like that. Right. And I'm sure on some level we're doing a lot of just kind of mundane tasks, but still to have the opportunity to be in the studio, to be around him, to be observing how he works and kind of how he spends his days. Right. Where do you want to start? How about if we start with kind of some of the things that you did day to day, and then I definitely want to ask about some of the more memorable experiences. So what did you do day to day?
Sure. So this last summer was actually my third go around with Jason. I did it last summer in January for our J term, which is like our interim class. And then again, this last summer. And so for the day to day, honestly, I wish I could be like, yeah, I woke up, did this, went to bed, but it changed every single day. I would say for the typical, if you can even call it that, I would, get up, right, do my things I need to do at my own house. But then when I would go to the studio, there was kind of like 3 different things that could take place there. I could just show up to the studio, work on my own music, my own productions, my own beats in his phenomenal studio, which I'm very grateful that he let me do that, and just really work on honing my own craft, right, on my own time. Or I could go in and I could work with various other artists who would rent out the studio, for their own usage. And I could helping them out with whether it's engineering, production, or just being management. And yes, I did some of the mundane tasks of internships, right? I might have to go, get some ice, go do some running. Like the task of a runner is no small feat, that's for sure.
Right.
Having to go get what the various artists want, because at the end of the day, you have to build that rapport with them anyway. So you might as well get on their good side by being willing to help out wherever possible. But then along with that, and I think this was personally my favorite thing to do, is whenever I got the chance to work with Jason, and, he would call me, or I would get a text from his manager or him or just whoever saying, hey, we're going to be in the studio starting, let's say at typically we'll say 7 p.m. just to give a rough estimate. And then, I'll come in, I'll make sure the studio's all prepped, the equipment's all working, computers fired up, everything's ready to go for whoever the producers, engineers, the various artists that'll come in alongside Jason. And then over the course of the night, I'll make sure everything's prepped that they need. But then afterwards, I really just helped them give musical input where needed. So, on one track that we did, I really helped. He was like, hey, what did you think about the production of this? I was like, okay, this is my opinion. Here's how we tweak it. We'll see how that sounds, go from there. I mean, it's really the process of what different artists use. So you just have to really be able to give input where necessary, but you also don't want to give too much, right? You don't want to try to take over by any means, but over the course of the night, and this wasn't a short night. It's not like we wrapped up in a couple hours and we're like, all right, call it a night. We might not be done till, I'd say on average 2-3 a.m. But I mean, the longest session I think I've ever done was I got to the studio around 4:30 p.m. and I did not get back to my apartment until about 10 a.m. the next day. So
Wow.
You do those long hours, and then that next day we had another session, another 12 hours in the studio. I mean, it's kind of living in reverse of what a lot of people's jobs are, right? You might wake up, have your 9 to 5 or something like that. But, for me, it's like I wake up probably when you're getting back from work, or, you're at your lunch break, and then you spend the 24 hours awake sometimes, but it's all worth it in the end. That's for sure.
Sure. It's interesting to hear you, comment on doing the little things to build a relationship. So often when talking with artists and hearing, folks talk about mentoring younger people, that aspect of relationships is so important. Did you find it hard at all to build relationships, and were you conscious and intentional of that, or was it just come naturally? You seem like an agreeable guy.
Right.
How did you even think about that?
So I guess I'm not even gonna lie. The first night I knew, last summer 2021, the first night I ever was gonna meet Jason, I was nervous, right? Because I'm like, oh, he's this A-list pop artist, right? He's world renowned, he does all of this in the music industry. I was nervous at first, but I kind of had a mild game plan, which was really just, hey, don't stand out too much to the point where he's going to be like annoyed or anything. But you also don't want to just sit there and do absolutely nothing. Wait for your time for when it's like, hey, I know I can step in, provide valuable feedback, and actually, help the musical process. Because at the end of the day, when you're in the studio, yes, it's fun for the artist. Sometimes it is just to, have a relaxation. But it is part of their business and the part of the growth of them, as a person, an artist, and as a business. So you really have to be able to maneuver it that way. For me, what I did was, the first couple sessions I had with Jason, if he said something to me, I'm going to respond naturally, but I'm not going to give my input just randomly, because we didn't have that personal relationship yet. Right. But over the course of, the weeks that went by, eventually he was really able to see, okay, this kid knows his stuff, right? He knows, I mean, eventually I was able to sneak in there because he asked if I played guitar, which I do not play guitar. That's one of the instruments I cannot play. So, but instead of just being like, I can't play guitar, and he's like, okay, move on next. I was like, but I can play piano, I can play cello for you if you want. And that really stuck with him, especially that cello aspect. So, a week went by and next thing I know, I was playing cello on two of his tracks one night. So, you really just have to look for the right opportunity to really step in, because at the end of the day, you have to have the talents and be able to show your skill set, right? You can't just walk in and be in the right place, right time if you don't have anything. But at the end of the day, you still have to be, maneuvering where you are at the right time. You have to position yourself where it's most advantageous. Like, let's say I didn't go to LA, I wouldn't have had that, circumstance happen at all. So you just have to position yourself not only as a musician, but, as a business person and just a person in general, where is best for your benefit, but also to their benefit.
So you catch his attention by saying that you play cello. You get the chance to play cello on a couple of his tracks. Are there other moments as you think about this internship that you're just like, I will never forget this moment when he said this or I did that, or it was just a really cool moment or opportunity for you?
Right. I would say I will go back to last January when I was there for a very brief amount of time. I think it only ended up being 3-4 weeks because, I had to get back to my classes for the next semester. And I was, we were talking, chit-chatting after a session, and he really looked at me and just said, thank you for being a musical help here, but also just a good person, right? That really stuck with me. He's like, I see some of myself in you. I just see the determination and the drive to just, get to that next level. And I mean, I've learned this just throughout my life. It's like, if you want something, you have to have the drive to get it. It's not just going to fall in your lap. You have to put in that effort. And just to hear that coming from someone who I've looked up to like that, it really just meant a lot. It was really cool because, the next session was my last session before I came back. And, at first I thought, oh, it was just, a one-off compliment, nothing like that. And he just, he doubled down on it. And it really meant a lot to me just to hear that from someone that, not only let me work in his studio, right, but let me come back time and time again. And just, I don't know, it makes you feel really good when you get that type of compliment, no matter really who it's from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super curious. How did you even land that first gig in January that then got you back over the summertime?
Right. So January is actually the second go around. So we'll back up one more summer to the first time. And let's say spring 2021 was probably when this whole process started. It was just after my freshman year, my first year of college. And I was really trying to think about, okay, I don't want to just sit around and do nothing. Now, I could work on my own music here in Sioux Falls. I could do gigs around here, but I was like, I really just want to position myself in the industry where I know it's the biggest, right? Los Angeles. That's where all the music takes place. So I was looking and just thinking about, okay, what opportunities are there? And, after your first year, usually a lot of internships they have to apply for, like, hey, we're looking for someone who's usually after their third year or their fourth year or already graduated before they really hire someone. So I was like, okay, who do I know out in Los Angeles? I reached out to a couple of my contacts, but it was actually my mom who was like, hey, we have our family friend. His name's Ben Hogarth, biggest help in the world, because he was really my gateway into this. He's like, why don't you send him an email and see what happens? I'm like, okay, cool. And, I shoot him an email. And at first I heard back, he's like, hey, let's have a phone call. I was like, great, cool. We have our phone call. It was awesome phone call. He set me up with a few like tips and tricks. He's like, if I hear anything, I'll let you know. I'm like, okay, great. I was like, I have my foot in the door in a way. But, a month passed. This is probably end of April at this point. And, the summer's coming up rapidly. The semester is about to end. And I was like kind of freaking out a little bit, but my parents were like, hey, just reach out to him again in another email. I'm sure he just got busy. Nothing of that sort. I was like, okay. I sent an email and I sent, and I was like, okay, let's see what happens. Not even 10 minutes later, Ben emails me back saying, yeah, if you want to come out here and be an intern, we'd love to have you, and which I wasn't expecting that email, because at first my initial plan was like, maybe I can shadow for a weekend, something of that sort, just get a little bit of time. And he was like, no, come on out. We'd love to have you. And, it did help that he kind of knew that I already knew Pro Tools, because I've been using Pro Tools since 2014. So that helped definitely to have that skill set to be like, hey, I can provide this. But, Ben, he was like, come on out. I lived with him that summer. He was like, I'll take you anytime we go into the studio. And yeah, that was kind of my little gateway. And so without my parents being like, hey, pushing me in the right direction, and Ben being willing to, take me under his wing, it really would have probably never happened at all. Ben was Jason's engineer for 5 years at the time. So he definitely had the connections to be like, hey, can I bring an intern in? And it just worked out really, really well. It was, right place, right time, right skill set. So it really just meant a lot.
But I mean, I know the intimidation of reaching out to somebody on a cold call email, even if you know them through the family or something. Let me ask, how did you position that first email? How did you, like frame that first contact and be like, hey man, can you hook me up?
Right. Well, so it was definitely a nerve-wracking email to send. And even nowadays, just sending an email to someone that I don't have the super close relationship to is always worrying, right? I'm like, make sure I sound professional, make sure I don't sound too forward, right? I think I had my parents reread my email like 2-3 times before I hit send, even though they're like, you don't have to worry too much. He's a really good guy, right? But I really just tried to position that email as like, hey, is there any way I can talk to you? Right. I wasn't trying to position myself right off the bat, like, hey, I want to work with Jason. Let me work with Jason. Because if I probably did that, it would probably have been too forward, right? There's a certain level of, I think, like boundaries you can't cross yet until you build that relationship a little bit. But, I was just like, hey, I'd love to talk to you, pick your brain about some music stuff. And I mean, Ben's always said this, and I've kind of noticed this too within any industry. They're always willing to help. Any professional is willing to help if you just want to ask a question or something. Unless someone is absolutely rude, they're not going to just turn you down flat out, be like, sorry, I don't have the time to answer your one question, nothing like that. I've noticed people are just really nice, even though the music industry is extremely intimidating. There's always that cutthroat mentality that's supposedly there. And it is there at times, right? At the end of the day, people are trying to make money and such, but also trying to make good music, and they want to be the best artists they can. But people are willing to help you out. I mean, without Ben, without Jason, without all these people just being willing to even be like, hey, I'm willing to give this guy a chance, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it's, just you always ask the question, always send that email. At the end of the day, send 2-3 emails. Maybe not within the same day or something like that, but it's okay to be persistent, especially since that persistence, they might not see the first email or they just forgot about it. Like everyone's busy. At the end of the day, people are going to help you out if they really want to. So just send that email. That's my biggest advice.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I do just want to remind folks that, we do have a Q&A.
Yes.
So by all means, put in your questions for Gilbert, whatever, about the internship, about his experiences, either with Jason or also just, how he came to get prepared, and
Yes.
or about Pro Tools. Certainly
Yes.
can ask about Pro Tools. Gilbert, share with me, I hope you don't mind me saying this,
Yes.
before he said, I wonder if anyone's going to stump me, if they're going to ask me a question. So,
right. No, I want to be stumped. Honestly, if you ask a question that's something that I really have to think about, good on you, honestly. I'm not saying I know every answer in the world, but I want to be stumped. I like the challenge.
Awesome. Well, let's pivot though. How did you made the statement that, at the end of the day, you do have to have the skills, right? You have to bring something to the table. How did you develop your skills? What are your skills?
Yes. So I guess I'll start kind of from the beginning of my musical journey. I started playing piano when I was 3, which is really early. But my parents, they kind of, they'd play baby Mozart for me on the television, stuff like that. And I think my parents were really trying to mold me to like push me towards music. I mean, they both played music a little bit, but neither of them were professional musicians. But I mean, they really supported me every way they could in music. So I started piano when I was 3. And then, I would do basically at that point, if I saw something I wanted to try in music, I'd pick it up. I eventually picked up cello in 4th grade in elementary school, picked up saxophone 5th grade. And from that point, it was basically, if I see an instrument, I'm going to try playing it. Ukulele, tried playing it, drums, any woodwind instrument, any string instrument, just not brass instruments. I could not wrap my head around trumpets and all that. But eventually I would go on to play a bunch of orchestras. I'd be in the youth orchestra here in Sioux Falls. I would do the music camp that took place in the summers here at Augustana University. My parents enveloped me in a lot of music, which I'm forever thankful for that. It really pushed me in the right direction, and they supported me in every step I wanted to take. And eventually I got to high school, right? High school, I typically think is where people like try to refine their path, what they really want to do for activities. And, I used to swim competitively when I was in middle school, and I used to do a bunch of different activities, but eventually I decided, okay, it's time to focus on music just for time wise, because, going in high school, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of assignments you have to do. So I was like, oh, let's focus on music. And I went to Lincoln High School here in Sioux Falls, which is a phenomenal music high school. It's a public school, but their music program's phenomenal. They have a phenomenal marching band, a symphonic band, which I was in on saxophone, a symphony orchestra that I did with cello, jazz band. Basically, name a type of music, it's probably there in some sort of capacity. Okay. So I was enveloped in that. And then eventually I auditioned for the National Honors Performance Series orchestras during 2018. And I got accepted into both the one for Carnegie Hall and then the Sydney Opera House on cello. And I got to perform cello solo at the Sydney Opera House. So that really pushed me in that direction. But at the time, it really was just classical music. Like I enjoyed pop music, hip hop music, all that in my spare time, but at least for study wise, it was very much classical music, music theory. I tried to do as much as possible. I think I've played almost every Chopin nocturne at this point on piano. Like I enveloped my entire life with it.
Sure.
And that really propelled me.
What was the trigger to flip you over to wanting to produce and not produce classical?
So in 2014, this is before high school and all that, I got Pro Tools via suggestion of some really good family friends of mine, Gary and Paul, who were both out in Los Angeles when we were out there visiting. And they're like, try Pro Tools if you want to record yourself. So I was using Pro Tools kind of to just record my own little like songs that I'd write on piano or something like that. And, it was still used in a very classical way. And for my senior year of high school, I decided to go to the Interlochen Arts Academy in Traverse City, Michigan. And I was only there for 2 months though, however, because when I got there, well, it's actually before I got there, I was practicing 6-7 hours a day on cello to really prep myself for, I'm eventually going to audition for the Juilliards, the Eastmans, the conservatories of the music world. And I kind of just not broke my arm, but I kind of ruined it in that sense. My left arm, I got thoracic outlet syndrome, which prevented me from playing at all. My hand would go numb anytime I tried to play. So, I was there for only 2 months because eventually I had to head back due to physical therapy, all that. But I mean, Interlochen's a phenomenal school. I mean, when I was there, I ranked #1 for music theory. So that they kind of motivated me to keep on doing all the classical music stuff. But obviously, if you can't play, it's really hard to want to do something. It was kind of like an unfriendly reminder, right? I'm in this arts institution that is one of the best in the world, if not the best for high school. And everyone's playing their instrument, doing what they want. And I just couldn't play. I kind of had to sit there and work on my assignments and such. But as much of a downer as that was kind of when I decided to start pivoting. Even when I was there and by the time I came home, I was starting to produce more music just on my own with my MIDI keyboard because, if I can't play, I might as well compose. And I shifted my major for the time while I was out there from cello major to a composition major So I had some formal training in that aspect. And, I would sit, whether it was on Sibelius or Pro Tools, and just kind of try to come up with different sounds and such. And
Okay.
as the months went on, I was still recovering. It ended up being about 6 to 8 months of recovery before I could fully play again. I was, trying to figure out, what am I going to do for college, right? And, being in town, I knew of Augustana University. They were just about to start up the Multimedia Entrepreneurship major, which is part of the Avid learning program. So, this major encompasses not only the production and the music that I've always loved, but you get certified not only in Pro Tools, but also Sibelius and Media Composer. So I kind of leaned a lot more heavily towards that once I knew I could actually go to school for that. And also, I think during that time, I ended up just listening to a lot more pop and hip hop music than I did classical. Which, I've always listened to that, right? But it was a pretty dramatic shift when my playlist goes from Chopin and Beethoven to, all right, here's your Billboard Top 100 list. And, here's Notorious B.I.G. and different other artists, rappers from the early 2000s. So it was a gradual change that was not only stemmed, I think, from my own interest, but, trying to figure out what I can do in the future, given my circumstance at the time with my injury.
Yeah, exactly. We have a couple questions coming in from socials.
Yes.
One from Jeffrey Olivier from Deltech, and apologies, Jeffrey, if I've said that wrong. What challenges did you face in your early years of engineering?
Right. I think
kind of leading into that, tell us about it.
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge was I use Pro Tools pretty exclusively to just click record and play piano, play my pieces for the longest time. I did not know about the extensiveness that you can really use it. I did a few like online tutorials, right? Stuff like that. But I think the biggest challenge for my early engineering really was how to shift to in a more efficient manner that doesn't take forever. And I will forever be thankful for Ben for teaching me that. Ben Hogarth, I mean, he's considered one of the best engineers right now, recording engineers in Los Angeles. He's just super fast. Like anyone that I met outside of even from Jason knew who he was. So it was like, yeah, he's the guy you go to because he's so fast at, the different engineering aspects, whether it's mixing, recording. He does all of it basically all at once, which is phenomenal. So kind of looking at what he did, trying to mimic that, working up my skills. The challenge is getting it into your fingers and being able to do it on a consistent level, right? It's great if you can learn something once, do it really efficiently that one time, but you have to be able to replicate it in order to have success. Like I remember one of the first times I got the chance to record Jason, at first I was intimidated, right? Because, he's still Jason. As much as a friend as he was to me at that time, it's still a different position that I've never been in before. I sat down, I looked at the screen, and despite knowing everything on the screen, I kind of like froze up for like quick 5 seconds or whatever, because I'm like, all of a sudden you lose all that information that I've known for the 8 years that it was or whatever. It's like, it just totally disappeared.
Yeah, the nerves that just glazes over.
Right. Exactly. So I think the challenge with engineering that is the fact that when you're working with these artists, unless it's like your friend or buddy who can totally understand, like if you make a little mistake, no biggie, right? Let's say it's your best friend from back home. One of my friends, me and him, we record stuff too. And, if I make a little mistake, no big deal, right? He's going to understand. And like Jason, I made one mistake and I thought I was going to get kicked out. I thought everything was over. And he was like, it's fine. This is probably your first time recording someone like me before, so you're good. But, just being able to rebound if you make a mistake or being able to admit your mistake, I think that's huge. Just being able to own up like, hey, that's my bad, won't happen again. And I think everyone's willing to give someone a second chance. You might not get a third chance, but you will probably get that second chance. I think that's the biggest challenge, is getting over those nerves and then just being able to perform when it's time.
So I'm curious though, in terms of the timing of all this, how much did you know about Pro Tools before you had that first connection, that first opportunity with Ben? And then whatever level of usership that was, how much did that motivate you afterwards? And, you said you were at Augustana, you took some classes there, you got certified, right?
Yes,
On
yes.
Pro Tools. So like, what was that process like in terms of learning the software and putting it into use and, just like honing that craft of engineering? And, these webinars aren't about Pro Tools and Pro Tools operation. Feel free to talk about whatever you
Right.
want. But that experience of honing your craft and having the opportunity to do it under pressure, like you said.
Mhm.
Tell us about
So
that.
I would say getting up to the level that's necessary, it definitely took some time, right? Like I said before, I kind of just use Pro Tools as a DAW to just record what I'm playing, listen back
Mhm.
to it. And here's
Yep.
my MP3 for an audition tape. Great. That's nowhere close to what engineers need to be able to do. So, when the first time I really had to engineer, you know, one of my friends, I was fortunate enough, my friend Adam, he was like, hey, I want to record a song. I was like, great, this is great practice for me. I was able to use that experience as like, hey, maybe this works better than that, just practicing with all of these ideas I had. Because at the end of the day, you can watch as many YouTube videos as you want. You can listen to whoever, but unless you're actually doing the actions yourself, you're not going to know. It's a lot different than taking a test versus actually doing what was on the test. So even before I met Ben, I was doing a lot of production of beats. So my focus was less on engineering and more on beat production. So I had a good scope of virtual instruments and MIDI and just utilizing the tools for that aspect. But once I got to work with Ben and work here with Dr. Follier, the Dean of Music here at Augustana University, on different various projects we had, I really didn't have those engineering skills really there. So I decided I need to absorb all the information I can, really just work out. Like there would be times when I'd be on my laptop, and this was what Ben told me. He's like, hey, if you have time, you don't have to be recording anything. It could just be total silence. Practice going through the motions and envisioning a scenario in your head. So let's say you have someone in a booth and they're just doing the same line over and over. Okay, can you start the recording, trim the recording after pausing it, but also keep recording for the next take and then playlist it? Can you do the motions that are necessary? And I would go through all those and I'd learn the commands gradually. And I will say eventually becoming certified at the user level for Pro Tools here at Augustana, it helped immensely, right? I was able to learn the different commands in a formal fashion and really see what areas I was like missing out on in my education of Pro Tools. Because Pro Tools on a base level, if you're looking for your production, like I knew the stuff that was within the producing world, but I didn't know about the hundreds of other things that this DAW could use. And, it was intimidating, but once I actually got through and learned those things, that really did help boost my engineering aspect and just utilizing Pro Tools. Because let's be real, any software, whether it's Pro Tools or anything, looking at it, a blank canvas for the first time and not knowing what to do is the most terrifying thing ever.
Yeah. We had another question from social. Steve Bullitt, TAFE, New South Wales. I think you've answered some of this, but what are a few things that you learned at college that were helpful for this experience? And what did you learn during the internship that hadn't been covered at college so far?
Right. So I'll start with the college part. So the multimedia entrepreneurship major, it's not just here's your production engineering skills, your Avid certifications, and your music aspect. It's also a business major kind of tied into it. So I will say being able to have those people skills that you learn from the different, management classes I had to take, what skills I needed to market myself in my marketing classes, just having all of those in college alongside the skills I learned from my Pro Tools and just the various experiences you get here at Augustana helped a lot, right? But at the end of the day, nothing prepares you quite like actually doing the work at an internship. Like, I kind of was like, okay, I know Pro Tools a little bit, but I'm not an expert. And then I got to the first session. I said, wow, there's too much I don't know yet. I need to get on my game, get everything going. So I would say the wake up call is it's like you read a book about something. It's like, okay, great. You're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Great. I know to do X, Y, and Z. It's now a matter of, can I do X, Y, and Z? And that's kind of what the internship really told me. And I think the other thing the internship really opened my eyes to is how to deal with people, those, those relationship builders, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to be friends with these people, but it is business practice, right? You have to be professional. Like, yeah, as much as like I enjoy talking, doing whatever with whether it was Jason or his managers or anyone else who came in, there does come a time where you have to be very professional and you have to send a certain email or you have to do different things that, you might think, okay, what if this jeopardizes the relationship? End of the day, people know friendship versus business relationship. There's a distinction there. And just seeing how to handle that distinction at this internship, that really changed a lot of my perspective for everything, really.
Yeah, those soft skills are so important. And I have to tell you, just commenting on what you were mentioning before, the idea of practicing, for lack of a better term, the fingerings on Pro Tools,
Right.
the way you do cello, right? Practicing the key commands and everything on Pro Tools.
Right.
Was it your experience as a musician that made you comfortable doing that, or what do you think?
I think so. So I would definitely say, if anything, the piano aspect kind of helped a little bit, because I kind of can look at memorizing a piece of music on piano. Let's say it's Chopin's Nocturne, Opus 9, number 2, right? You have to learn the notes. The notes are the notes. You shouldn't change the notes if you're going to perform that piece, unless it's for that reason, right? It's the same thing with Pro Tools. You have to play the right commands to get things going. So I think it is muscle memory, right? At the end of the day, you don't want to have to be looking at your hands just like you do with piano. Okay, here's where those keys are so I can do those commands. You just want to be able to look at the screen, keep it going, keep it rolling, and just go from one thing to the next. So it's, it takes time. It really does. It's a muscle memory. But at the end of the day, you just kind of have to grind it out. It's no different than when I practiced 6 hours a day on cello before I went to interlocking. You have to do the work if you want to get to a certain level, right? But you don't want to burn yourself out, right? You don't want to get carpal tunnel or anything like that. But it's same concept, just work, and eventually it'll come to you.
Yeah. So, please keep those questions coming in. I see we have a few more in the Q&A, and I'm going to bring it around to more Q&A here in a minute. So on socials, please chime in, comment. Let's get those questions coming in. We will be giving away a copy of Pro Tools Studio. Gilbert will.
Yes.
So he'll pick from the people who submit a question. But Gilbert, before we pivot fully to Q&A, I am curious. You've had some great success already.
Yes.
And no doubt that's motivating you to keep going, but also it's, I think, giving you a view of the challenges that lay ahead of you. Where do you go from here? You said you're entering your 3rd year at college, right? So how much more do you have to go? And then kind of what are your thoughts for next steps?
So I have 2 more years ideally left of college. Of course, unless I get that $1 million check a year coming in or something, that'd be phenomenal, right? But that's in the dream world. But my next 2 years of college, I'll still be working out. I'll do the next levels of certification here at Augustana for Pro Tools and Media Composer, really just hashing out those skills, making sure I have everything underway. But alongside that, the future looks like seeing how I can use the connections I've already made, in the past. How can I reach out to these other artists or work again with Jason to really continue to build that rapport and get things going? My end goal really is to be the best producer in the world, which is extremely ambitious, I know, but I think I can do that. I want to be able to one day be like, okay, here's a list of the best producers you've ever heard, right? We got Mike Dean, we got Metro Boomin, we got all these big, names in the pop hip hop world. I want Gilbert DeWitte to be right there alongside them. So that's the very end goal, right? I want that kind of legacy, but eventually after my 2 years, I plan on going back out to Los Angeles or wherever, the job lies. And this is another piece of advice. If you have a job, don't say no. If you can afford to go do a job for cheaper at some point, take the job. Eventually you need to make money, but it's worth building those connections and that networking. So if you get offered to do something, and even if it's the smallest job, like it's like, hey, it might be a hassle for you, that person's going to appreciate, do the job, do the work, but outside of that, after this 2 years, go back to Los Angeles, continue working out there, building my network, my connections. And, I would hope to maybe one day either own my own label or work in a label, my own production company, and just kind of go from there. I don't know. It's interesting because as much as I wish I could be like, this is the exact thing I'm going to do in the future, you can't say that in the music industry. It's constantly shifting, right? I mean, one day you could be engineering for someone in a studio. Next day you might be in Las Vegas doing a live show for someone. It's a wild ride, but it's very exciting nonetheless.
Well, and a fun one to be on for sure. I'm curious about the connections that you've made, and also curious, in this time, pandemic, post-pandemic, where so much is possible now online, there's so much more remote collaboration. Are you doing any of that right now? Are you working on projects with people that through school, or you've met out in LA, or
Right.
is any of that part of your world yet?
Yeah, I mean, so the various projects I work on, I like to be in person for a lot of my projects because it's always nice to have, be in person. That makes workflow sometimes a little easier because as much as the internet's great, it sometimes doesn't work in its entirety. But, I have various projects that I'm working on always. I'm currently talking with some people to see if I can do some live shows coming up here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. With Jason, there's plenty of times in the past where, will shoot me a text, be like, hey, are you up? And it'll end up just being something like, he just has a question about some sort of musical thing, or, I send him beats, and whether he uses the beats or not, it's the fact that you have to send stuff. And then different collaborations, I've done mixes for people where they send me their stuff, I have to mix it out. I prefer not mastering, but I'll do, like I said, any work, because at the end of the day, you got to take those jobs. But it's just, you take what you can. And like, whether it's with my connections out in Los Angeles, my connections here in Sioux Falls, my connections overseas, wherever it may be, there's always something on the horizon. You just have to look for it. And like I said, there's even times within the past month where I send an email to someone being like, hey, is there anything I can help with? Just seeing what else you can do, especially like when you're in college or at a university. It's good to just send those emails because, at the end of the day, once you graduate, you have to get a job somewhere. Might as well build those connections now as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it's a great way to start. Is there anything I can help with?
Yes, exactly.
I'm conscious we have, questions coming in, so let's turn to a few of those in the time that we have.
For sure.
We have an anonymous attendee who apparently isn't interested in winning the Pro Tools. But there was a question: what was the name of the place that you can learn Pro Tools, Sibelius, and Media Composer all together?
Yes, so this is the Augustana University School of Music. It's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, here in America. It's a phenomenal school. Absolutely love it here. I mean, I've been around this campus since I was little, but I mean, just what the programs and stuff were coming up, right? We just got an S6 board, an Avid S6 board, and we have Pro Tools Carbons. I think me and Dr. Colliard are going to help set up a bunch of stuff coming up here for our lab, where we're going to have new carbons, new gear, all that. So Augustana University School of Music. If you go on my Instagram, Gilbert_DeWitte, there should be some stuff there and some links like that. So, and also just total side note, if you guys ever have questions or anything, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm always willing to answer questions, and I'm always willing to meet new people and work with people. So just hit me up.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask at the end where you want people to hit you up. So
Yes.
Instagram for sure. And if there's another, we'll cover that. Ignacio La Saga is asking, hi, Gilbert. Do you think it was mostly the work ethics and drive that got you the opportunity, or the ability to make connections in general?
It's both at the end of the day, I think. That's an interesting question, because at the end of the day, you can look at anything in life and be like, here's the different angles you can look at it. Growing up, I remember like in elementary school, middle school, filling out sheets that are like, name a characteristic about yourself, those random little like fun facts. And I'd always put driven or determination, stuff like that. So there's always been that drive, and sometimes to a fault, right? I mean, sometimes at Augustana, we do a thing where it's called Strengths Quest, where we like, here's our top 5 strengths. My number 1 was competition, and then number 2 was achiever. So it was one of those things where I'm always kind of been driven, but those connections are huge. You have to be personable, right? I mean, I think with Jason, at least with that specific instance, my good work ethic, he noticed it immediately, right? But at least with him, from what I understand, what he's told me and what I've heard from the others around him, it was the personability and the networking and the professionalism I showed that really got him to like me and to keep me around. So you have to be able to do both. I wish I could just be like, hey, just pick this one thing, just perfect everything, but that's not how life is. You have to be able to utilize all of your skill sets. And let's say you're not the best at networking, right? Figure out how to make that better, right? Take classes on it, YouTube something. Or let's say you're not the most driven person in the world, find something that makes you driven, right? Everyone has something that's going to get them going. You just got to find it. That's really how you're going to be able to succeed, is just to keep going.
Good deal. We have another one here from Kirsten Smith. Have you ever notated music on Sibelius in order to produce it using Pro Tools?
Yes, I've had to do that a couple times. For classes here at Augustana, and then just on my own. So, it's a process. It's a fun process. I used to use Finale back in the day, which I know is kind of the Avid competitor, but it didn't have that transferability, right, at all with Pro Tools. And since Pro Tools was the DAW I've always used, just because, no matter who I've asked, they've been like, hey, learn a DAW, no matter what it is, and just really learn that one to the best of your ability. So I chose Pro Tools just because that's what was suggested to me. So Sibelius, when, I've composed different pieces, whether it's piano pieces, orchestral pieces, stuff like that, being able to just transfer that into MIDI, into Pro Tools, and then use my very fancy sounds that I have on my hard drive virtual instruments, it's a fun process. Obviously you're going to run into your little bumps along the way, but it's one of those things where I've done it. It's a good process. And I definitely recommend people try doing that, because, some people learn music by ear, right? But being able to hand them that sheet of paper that has the notations on them and being like, hey, this is what we're playing, it helps so much. And it's very useful.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat right now, so I am going to give one more call for Q&A questions. If you have any, please type them in. Let's get them in on socials. Let's get them in here in the webinar itself, so that we can get them to Gilbert, and we can get you in the running for Pro Tools. Gilbert, I'm curious, as you think about even the process of going from Sibelius into Pro Tools, and just kind of working in that ecosystem, what was the thing that you liked best about that interoperability? Or even, are there things about Finale that you wish were in Sibelius or whatever? The thing about the Inside Track series is that this is not about product.
Right.
So feel free to say, on Finale, I like to do it this way. On Sibelius, I do it differently. But I for Kirsten's sake, I want to dig into that a little bit more about what was your process kind of taking one from one to the other.
So I think with Finale, there's some great things about Finale. I will say, like, how it notates out, it worked out really well for me when I was using it when I was, younger, right? But with Sibelius, I think just the fact that effectively anything you type into it, you can so easily transfer that file into Pro Tools is huge, right? And Sibelius has some really great things too that can help move your musical process and help it flow, right? It has suggestions and stuff, within its program to be like, hey, what about this type of rhythm, stuff like that. So I think I don't know, it just ended up being a smooth transition, because at the end of the day, commands are commands, but notation softwares, no matter what you use, at the end of the day, it's great no matter how versatile it is, but you still have to put your music down at the end of the day. you have to put the music in. So I don't know. It was a smooth transition for me, but yeah, it was pretty good.
Cool. Got a couple more questions that have come in here while we were answering that one. Chris Nobis from California State University asked, what are some opportunities to get into the music industry, either in the studio or are there Pro Tools support opportunities?
All right. So opportunities to get into the music industry. I wish there was just like, yeah, here's a list of everything you could ever want, right? For me, it was, I was able to reach out to one of my connections to get to work with Jason, right? But I would say if there's a company you want to work with, no matter, let's say you want to work with Atlantic Records, or you want to work with Columbia, or you want to work with Avid, or whoever it may be, go on their websites. They have contact information for whoever it may be, and reach out to them, right? Now, like I said before, though, you might not get a response on the first email. Try it again, try it again. There's a lot of opportunities within the music industry that aren't just studio either, right? It could be like, you might be a recording engineer, but there's also production opportunities elsewhere. There's also live show opportunities, right? I got some opportunities to work with Jason's live shows too, where we got to travel around to various different locations, which was a blast, getting to see that aspect of the music industry too. There's also like the corporate music industry, right? You can work at the various levels there too. So, or marketing, or there's hundreds of opportunities within the music industry that both utilize Pro Tools or different DAWs, as well as not. I mean, at the end of the day, like, for example, my multimedia entrepreneurship major, I could take my degree and my certifications, go work in a studio, or I could work at, one of the big labels out in Los Angeles as one of their A&R people, or I could go and work live shows for a career. There's hundreds of opportunities definitely out there.
Awesome. We have one more from Jeffrey at Dell Tech again, and I think this is going to be our last one as we're coming up on time. So how do I continue to build those relationships with artists after working with them? For example, I worked with a very well-known artist lately. Session went great, no complaints with anything. So how do I get to continue working with that artist or keep a line of communication open so that when they do come back into town, I'm their go-to engineer?
Right. Each artist is different, which is the case with people in general. Like, everyone's different. So there's not like one definitive answer, but what I suggest is, maybe send an email or a text saying, hey, it was great working with you. I really enjoyed it. If you ever need anything at all, please let me know, right? I mean, I did that with Jason plenty of times, even after we built that rapport, just to be like, hey, it was great seeing you again. It was great working with you. Look forward to working with you in the future. Just doing those like kind little acts definitely helps build your relationship with that. Along with that, let's say you want to work with them for sure. See if you can find their managers or the people that they surround themselves with that like help organize their life, right? Because I know a lot of various artists at different levels, they have their managers and their various agents and such managers that help, structure their life or their schedules with different studios and such. If you really want to work with them, reach out to those people too, because sometimes artists don't check their emails as much as I have found in the past. You might have to just reach out to whoever. It really is just a try to reach out, try not. And let's say it doesn't happen with that artist, which would suck, right? You want everything to work out. But if you can get those opportunities already taken and be like, it's already on your resume. If you've already worked with them, it's on your resume. Take that to the next artist, take that to the next company, and try to just find work. Because at the end of the day, you might come full circle and work with them again. So my suggestion is reach out however you can in a very professional way, though. You don't want to bug them. You don't want to seem weird, right? But reach out to them, build those relationships however possible. Just the little things always matter. Just the, hey, thanks again. This was great. Let me know if you need anything. So I think that's my suggestion there. There's not like do X, Y, and Z here, like I said earlier, and this will happen. It's one of those things where it's, just work at it, see how you can massage the relationship to really propel it forward to the next step.
Awesome. There's one more here I'm seeing in the Q&A, and Shauna, I'm going to give one more call out for socials if there's anything coming in from there that will squeeze in under the wire. Susan L, this doesn't seem like a question so much as a comment. Susan L. Taft, she said, third year learning Pro Tools. I got A's, but COVID-19 hit me bad and I lost the sight in one eye. You inspire me to continue as a vocal producer. My brain in my right eye keeps compensating. Thank you. I'd love to win Pro Tools. So,
well, thank you. That means a lot. Seriously. I mean, just keep working at it. Seriously. I firmly believe, especially within the music industry, if you want to do something, do it. So seriously, thank you. That compliment means a lot. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right, Shauna, Gilbert, you can see the questions in the chat. If you don't have it open, you may just want to pop that up.
Yes.
And Shauna, I'm just going to ask one more time. Is there anything else on the socials that we need to squeeze in under the wire here? Are we going to do our giveaways?
Doing one last refresh, which is probably going to make sound. No, it's not. No, it's not. Yes, actually, we have one question. This is from Richard Lake, who is a student at SAE North America. Which social media platform is best to promote your work? I do like that question. That's a good question.
Oh, good question.
All righty. So I can, from what I've heard from within the industry, right? So Jason, if you guys don't know, Jason Derulo has a massive following on TikTok, millions and millions of followers. TikTok has recently been like one of the largest search platforms just within the last couple of years. So TikTok is the easy answer there. If you're able to use TikTok, use it, right? I even know for myself, I need to get better at using it, but TikTok not only can show you the trends of where things are going, but also, hey, maybe I can innovate and put myself out there too. I would also say Instagram, right? Instagram tends to be the platform I've noticed with people in, the younger generations tend to use. I mean, at least when Jason's promoting everything, the first two things he does is TikTok, Instagram, in that order, always. So I would say those are your big socials to really nail home. And even then, there's challenges to building your following. Try to find your niche that isn't so obscure that people aren't going to watch, but isn't so muddled in the middle where it's like you don't stand out. You want to stand out, but you want to stand out correctly, right? It's how can you position yourself to best be advantageous to your business? It's a business at the end of the day. That's what marketing really is. So go for TikTok, go for Instagram. And even then, like Facebook, I still use Facebook, right? I know plenty of people still use Facebook because Instagram and Facebook, you can make a post and it goes to both anyways. So you might as well, right? I mean, Snapchat is a platform I know that's starting to get innovated a little bit more too. So I would say, yeah, definitely TikTok and Instagram though. Definitely try to use those.
Top class.
Would completely agree with that. And TikTok is, there's some really interesting influencers and kind of musicians on TikTok doing a lot of stuff with, not just Pro Tools, but every DAW kind of thing and doing helpful tips and tricks. And I find that's a really interesting niche. They're just sharing their knowledge on a platform, and it's super easy to do. But I definitely think, especially building your personal brand as well, having that kind of social output and being able to put content out there. And it's great to, attach to your CV or send that being like, hey, here's, some videos I'm doing on TikTok, around Pro Tools. So you can see that I can actually use it. Can I have a job?
And there's plenty of people skimming those socials too. Like there's people within companies whose entire job is to just scroll through TikTok and see if they find someone. So it's worth it at the end of the day, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we are just at the top of the hour, so I do believe we need to wrap this up and Gilbert, let you get back to the rest of life. Thank you for all the time that you've spent with us. Before we go, we have some very important business to take care of. So scrolling through the questions that have come in, it's over to you to choose and announce the winner.
Yes. All right. So, well, first off, thank you everyone for coming out and listening and watching. It really means a lot to me. And yeah, it's awesome. So thank you. Along with that, thank you to everyone who's asked questions. All of you guys asked really awesome questions. It is cool because I'm glad I can help you guys out however possible. But the winner that I decided for the Pro Tools Studio license, it's going to go to Ignacio. So thank you for the question. Shauna will reach out to you to get that connection going so we can get your license. So thank you again for the question, and thank you all for the questions and just for coming out. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Gilbert, before we let you go, where do they find you? And we can put this in the show notes, but you mentioned Instagram already. Are you also on TikTok?
I'm not haven't posted anything on TikTok yet, but it will be under GMD Productions is what the account will be once in the future. And I'll end up making a post about that on Instagram. But my Instagram is Gilbert_DeWitte. Feel free to message me there. I'm always willing to answer questions and collaborate. I'm always looking for new artists and producers to work with. Along with that, yeah, just feel free to reach out. I mean, I'm also on Facebook. It's Gilbert DeWitte. It's the same as my Instagram. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
All right.
And Ignacio, my email is shauna.purcell@avid. It's pretty simple. However, I think I've got your email from the webinar registration. So regardless, we'll reach out.
All right. Well, Shauna, you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, happy to. I mean, Gilbert, that was awesome. I think you're a very unique individual in the sense that, you know, your drive and your passion and your experience so far. Honestly, I'm definitely going to be following you on socials and seeing what you do next, because I think it's just insane. You know, you've had some really cool experiences, and you know, I think it's really inspiring what you're doing, and I think a few people in the chat have said that as well. So no, I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what happens in the future, and obviously being able to, you know, continue this relationship with Avid and doing more, because we want to be able to do that, and that goes with, you know, all students and all education institutions. You know, Avid, we do care about the next generation of creators, and want to do whatever we can to promote what you guys are doing and get creative, really. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, thank you.
As always, for being a host, or an amazing host. That's kind of all I got. Like, if you're a student, hit us up on, you know, socials, or if you're anyone, you know, follow us on socials. We're constantly doing these sessions. We want to hear from you about what sessions you want to do, because again, we're Avid. I'm creating these sessions or putting these sessions on based on what we think you want to see. But if you've got a topic, or you've got a, you know, particular person you want to hear from, we're more than happy to arrange that, or try our best to kind of put on a session. So we want to hear from you on what you want to see, and obviously being able to give away as many Pro Tools licenses as humanly possible.
Yes.
We want you.
Well, Gilbert, just on a personal note, such a pleasure to see you again. I'm so glad we got to come and get connected and do this together. And yeah, like Shauna said, you know, it's just awesome to see what you're doing already. And I look forward to seeing what else you do, and kind of going along for the ride at a distance. So
yeah, no, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure for me too.
To seeing you in person.
Yes, for sure. It's been a pleasure. Can't wait to work with you guys again.
Awesome. Thank you guys all for joining. Everyone, wherever you are, I think we had a very global audience today, which is awesome. People from everywhere. So thank you all for joining. I hope this was helpful. You can leave a comment or anything that you want. I'm sure Gilbert will be able to see that. And have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you are.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.